поскольку телевидение не дают, радио не дают. Да. Я зачитываю. Гражданам России. В ночь с 18 на 19 августа 1991 года отстранен от власти законно избранный президент страны. Какими бы причинами не оправдывалось это отстранение, мы имеем дело с правым реакционным антиконституционным переворотом.
With the words of Boris Yeltsin and the defiance of a nation, the reactionary coup that would have reversed years of reform and restored Leninist communism to the Soviet Union fell apart. This defiance would not have been possible without Glasnost, meaning openness, and Perestroika, meaning restructuring. These reforms were implemented by Mikhail Gorbachev to fix the failing Soviet economy in 1985. Glasnost and Perestroika failed to reform the Soviet Union, but uncovered the inherent flaws in the Soviet command economy and discredited the entire political system. Soviet citizens no longer trusted old institutions that were revealed to be corrupt and wasteful, and turned to nationalist leaders for stability and assurance. The conflict created by the rising tide of nationalism led to a violent reactionary coup by communist hardliners, the failure of which empowered nationalists to finish their growing revolution and dissolve the Soviet Union. The Russian Revolution in 1917, led by Vladimir Lenin, created the first communist state. In a part of the world traditionally divided by ethnicity, Lenin consolidated his power under the ideology of communism in order to unite the different ethnicities of the region. In order to prevent ethnic unrest, Lenin created a federalist system, where the 12 ethnic republics within the Soviet Union were put under the rule of the central Soviet structure, but were able to maintain a semblance of their ethnic identity. By the end of World War II, the Soviet Union became a superpower, but by 1975, with its population growth stagnating and its ninth five-year plan not hitting its economic goals, it was clear that the Soviet system was fundamentally flawed. Furthermore, American President Ronald Reagan ordered a massive defense buildup in allied countries around the Soviet Union, and enacted policies that put enormous pressure on the already struggling Soviet economy, forcing the Soviet leadership to stretch its economic capacity beyond its means. With both internal and external pressures mounting, Soviet leader Leonid Brezhnev did nothing to fix what was becoming an emergency situation. After his death in 1982, he was succeeded by two decrepit communists, Yuri Andropov and Konstantin Chernenko. After their deaths, the Communist Party had to find a young reformer who could save the now defunct Soviet economy. Mikhail Gorbachev was that leader. Upon taking office, Gorbachev called for perestroika, or restructuring, of the Soviet system. Gorbachev did not want to fundamentally change the Soviet system. Instead, he believed that minor reforms could alleviate the problems facing the economy. However, because of the corruption and lies inherent to communism, Gorbachev was unaware of what was truly wrong with the economy. The only way to find out was to peel back the curtain of repression that had hung over the Soviet Union since the October Revolution. Prior to Gorbachev's rule, many industries lied about their production rates to give the government the illusion that they were fulfilling their mandatory production quotas. On February 25, 1986, Gorbachev called for Glasnost to stop this dishonesty and discover the underlying problems surrounding the Soviet economy. He arranged meetings to hear public opinion and debate over social problems, and appointed liberal editors to public newspapers ensuring honest news reports. He pardoned exiled political dissidents, abolishing the stigma against public discourse previously inherent to Soviet communism. Gorbachev, however, could not predict the people's response. Soviet citizens used their new voice to expose corruption in the government. Groups such as the Memorial Society devoted themselves to uncovering the bloody past of communism, and the critical works of political dissidents such as Anna Akhmatova were released, undermining the legitimacy of the Soviet Union with descriptions of atrocities committed under communism. As people lost faith in Soviet power, they wanted to find another source of assurance and structure. Soviet power had systematically eliminated the democratic ambitions of its citizens throughout its history. However, because the Soviet Union was a federalized system, it could never fully repress the national identity of its republics. Disillusioned Soviet citizens turned to ethnic leaders for stability in the now volatile Union. Growing nationalist movements began to directly challenge Soviet power. The nationalist movements in the Baltic states of Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia were the first to cause widespread unrest. These nations believed that they had been illegally occupied by the Soviet Union and yearned for independence. Glasnost gave these three republics the opportunity to organize themselves and demand independence. With a political crisis unfolding in the Baltics and economic instability causing protests and strikes in the rest of the Union, Gorbachev announced that he could no longer support the communist governments of Eastern Europe, leading to their rapid collapse. On November 9, 1989, the Berlin Wall, the greatest symbol of authoritarian communism, came crashing down. The inability of Gorbachev to control the fate of the Eastern Bloc further emboldened the nationalists, especially in the Baltics. In March of 1990, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia voted for secession from the Soviet Union. Over the next few months, while no other republic seceded, they all voted for sovereignty within the Soviet Union. Russia became a sovereign nation on June 12, 1990, with the Russian Supreme Soviet electing Boris Yeltsin as its leader. Yeltsin was formerly a communist leader who had been dismissed from his position on the Soviet Central Committee due to his radical nationalistic views. Though the Central Soviet structure attempted to challenge Yeltsin's declaration of sovereignty, they were unsuccessful in restraining what was becoming a Union-wide revolution. In response, the influential Neo-Stalinist Society for Unity, Leninism, and Communist Ideals published 4 resolutions criticizing Yeltsin and Gorbachev. The political upheaval caused by the 4 resolutions only highlighted the futility of Gorbachev's reforms and divided the nation between revolutionary nationalists and reactionary communists. The now irrelevant Gorbachev was stuck in the middle. On August 19, 1991, in order to counter the rising tide of nationalism, 8 members of the Central Committee instigated a coup in Moscow. The army took control of the Kremlin, surrounded the Russian parliament with tanks, and put Gorbachev under house arrest in Crimea. The coup leaders issued a statement saying that Glasnost and Perestroika were a mistake, and the Soviet Union had to revert to its pre-Glasnost ways. The leaders of the coup did not anticipate the response from the people. Hundreds gathered outside the Russian parliament to protest. On August 19th, in a pivotal act of opposition, Yeltsin climbed atop a tank and declared the coup illegal. After this act, he became a symbol for freedom and nationhood. On August 21st, the Alpha Team, an elite Russian military force, was ordered to storm the barricaded parliament building. The team voted to defy the orders of the reactionaries, and the coup fell apart. The failure of the August coup delegitimized the Soviet government. After its failure, the Soviet Union lost all control. It lost the power to tax, and Gorbachev became president in name only. Yeltsin held de facto power over Russia, and each republic became independent. On December 25, 1991, Gorbachev resigned as president of the Soviet Union. Nationalist movements were successful in inspiring total revolution in the Soviet Union, leading to its complete collapse. The ideological conflict between communism and democracy that had dominated the 20th century ended with the implosion of the communist world. The nationalism that destabilized the Soviet Union continues to cause conflicts in the region, as the former Soviet republics struggle to redefine themselves as independent nations. The Central Asian republics continue to be dictatorships that maintain their power by promising political separateness from Moscow. The Caucasus nations are gripped by continuing ethnic conflicts. Azerbaijan and Georgia have fought several ethnic wars, and the Chechen people continue to fight a guerrilla war against Russian domination. Ukraine and Belarus struggle to maintain their national identity against the power of Russia. The Baltic states of Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, nations that believed themselves illegally occupied by the Soviet Union until 1990, have all applied for membership in the European Union and have completely realigned themselves with NATO. Russia has reverted to its pre-Soviet ways. The leader of Russia, Vladimir Putin, has enacted authoritarian policies that look less like those of a president and more like those of a czar. Russian people are growing tired of their country's policies. The fall of the Soviet Union left Russian citizens poor, but left them with a voice. Recent demonstrations protesting Putin's authoritarian rule show that Russia is beginning to rise out of the ashes of communism in an effort to become a free nation. Glasnost and Perestroika allowed nationalism to effect revolutionary change. But in the wake of that revolution, democracy has begun to emerge.